It was a quiet morning in the small town of Cedar Ridge. The air was fresh, and the sun shone brightly over the fields that stretched for miles around the little farming community. Among the few scattered homes and barns, one house stood out, a small, modest farmhouse at the edge of the town. This was where Sarah, a young woman with untamed red hair and freckles across her face, lived with her family. She wasn't like the other girls in Cedar Ridge. While they were content with simple chores and daily routines, Sarah had a different side to her, one that was hidden from most of the world. Sarah had grown up on the farm, helping her father with everything from planting crops to fixing fences. But there was something special about her that few knew. Sarah had a natural talent for shooting. Her father, a former soldier, had taught her how to handle a rifle when she was just a young girl. At first, it was just for fun, a way to pass the time and practice her aim. But as Sarah grew older, her skills became sharper. She could hit a moving target from over 200 yards without hesitation, a skill that few men could claim to possess. Most of the time, she kept her talent a secret. People in Cedar Ridge didn't think much of women being good with weapons. It was a man's world, after all, and Sarah was content to keep to herself. But that all changed one fateful day when a group of bandits came to town. The bandits were notorious for causing trouble in nearby communities. They would rob banks, steal from farms, and terrorize anyone who crossed their path. The sheriff had tried to stop them before, but they were too quick and too dangerous. Word had spread that the bandits were heading towards Cedar Ridge, and everyone in town was on edge. Sarah's father had warned her to stay inside, to lock the doors and stay out of sight. But Sarah had other plans. She had grown tired of hiding. She had seen too many people in her town suffer because of men like the bandits, and she knew that her skills could help. So, she made up her mind to do something about it. While everyone else cowered inside their homes, Sarah prepared herself. She didn't want to put her family at risk, so she kept her plans to herself. Quietly, she took her rifle from its hiding place in the barn, loaded it carefully, and practiced her aim on a few targets she had set up in the open field behind the house. The bandits were coming, and she wasn't going to let them destroy her town without a fight. As the day wore on, the bandits made their move. They rode into town on horseback, loud and boisterous, causing fear wherever they went. Sarah watched from behind a thick oak tree near the edge of her farm, her heart racing with anticipation. She could hear the bandits' laughter from where she hid. They were confident, overconfident. They believed no one in Cedar Ridge could stand up to them. The leader of the bandits, a man named Cain, was the loudest of them all. He had a deep, booming voice that echoed through the streets as he yelled at the townspeople, demanding money, food, and anything of value. His men followed his lead, laughing and pushing people around, taking whatever they pleased. The sheriff, as usual, was too afraid to do anything. He stood at the edge of the crowd, nervously watching the scene unfold. Sarah's eyes never left Cain. She could feel the anger rising within her. She had seen enough. The bandits were laughing, mocking the people they had come to terrorize, unaware that there was someone watching them, a young woman who had spent years honing a skill that could end their reign of terror. Cain's men were drunk with power, their attention focused on looting and causing chaos, while Sarah remained hidden, calculating her every move. She took a deep breath and steadied her rifle, adjusting her position slightly. She had to make the first shot count. If she missed, the bandits would be on her in seconds. But she wasn't afraid. She had practiced for moments like this, and her heart remained calm as she focused on the target. Through the scope of her rifle, Sarah lined up Cain in her sights. The bandit leader was standing in the middle of the street, shouting at the sheriff. She knew she had only one shot. Sarah's finger gently squeezed the trigger. The loud crack of the rifle echoed across the town. Cain's body jerked as the bullet hit him square in the chest, sending him sprawling to the ground with a lifeless thud. The bandits froze in shock. They had never expected anyone to fight back, let alone a young woman hidden behind a tree. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The bandits looked around, trying to figure out where the shot had come from. But Sarah was already moving. She didn't need to hesitate. She quickly reloaded her rifle and fired again, taking down one of the bandits who had been reaching for his gun. Another shot rang out, and another bandit fell to the ground, his hands clutching his chest. The remaining bandits were in full panic now. They had no idea where the shots were coming from, and their leader was dead. They scattered, trying to find cover, but it was too late. One by one, Sarah picked them off, each shot landing with deadly accuracy. The town was silent except for the sound of Sarah's rifle as she carefully took out each bandit. By the time the last bandit had fallen, the streets were littered with the bodies of the criminals who had come to terrorize Cedar Ridge. Sarah stood up slowly, her rifle still smoking from the last shot. She felt no triumph, no joy, only the satisfaction of knowing that she had protected her home. The people of Cedar Ridge would never forget what she had done that day, but for Sarah, it was just another day on the farm. She quietly returned to her house, her mind already on the next challenge. She didn't want fame or recognition. She just wanted to keep her town safe. For Sarah, the real battle had only just begun. As Sarah made her way back to the safety of her home, the people of Cedar Ridge slowly began to emerge from their hiding places. They had heard the shots, and at first, they were too afraid to move. It was only when the sound of chaos had died down that they dared to venture out, their faces filled with confusion, disbelief, and awe. The town had always been peaceful, and the idea that a single woman, a farm girl, had taken down a group of notorious bandits was something beyond anyone's imagination. As the town gathered in the streets, whispers spread quickly. People spoke in hushed tones, trying to make sense of the incredible event that had just transpired. The sheriff, who had once been the town's only source of protection, was now standing in the middle of the street, his eyes wide with astonishment. He had been frozen in fear when the bandits first arrived, and it was only Sarah's quick thinking and bravery that had saved them all. Yet, despite her heroism, Sarah remained quiet. She didn't want the attention. She didn't seek praise. She simply did what needed to be done. As the townspeople approached her, their faces filled with gratitude and admiration, she just nodded, keeping her emotions in check. It wasn't long before news of what had happened spread beyond Cedar Ridge. The story traveled quickly, carried by travelers, traders, and anyone who passed through the town. The tale of the farm girl who had single-handedly taken down a group of ruthless bandits became a legend in its own right. Some townsfolk tried to downplay the story, saying that Sarah had just been lucky, that the bandits had made mistakes, but deep down, they knew the truth. Sarah had saved them, and no one would ever forget it. As the days went by, life in Cedar Ridge returned to normal. The streets grew quiet once again, and the farm chores resumed. But things were different now. There was a new respect for Sarah. The women who once dismissed her as just another farm girl now looked at her with awe, and the men, who had never taken her seriously, began to recognize the strength and determination within her. Even the sheriff, who had been the face of law and order in Cedar Ridge, now looked to Sarah for guidance. There was no question in anyone's mind that she was the one who had saved the town, and in doing so, she had proven that strength wasn't just about muscle or force. Sometimes, the greatest power lay in the ability to stand up when everyone else was too afraid to move. But even as the town began to treat her differently, Sarah remained humble. She continued to help her father with the farm, tending to the crops, fixing fences, and handling the animals. She didn't crave attention, and the idea of becoming a local hero was far from her mind. To her, it was simply the right thing to do. The bandits were gone, and the town was safe once again. That was all that mattered. However, Sarah knew that Cedar Ridge's problems were far from over. The bandits she had defeated were just one group. There were others out there, more dangerous and more determined to take what they wanted. And while she had proven that she could protect her town, she wasn't foolish enough to think that one victory would be enough to keep them safe forever. The world outside Cedar Ridge was changing, and Sarah knew that sooner or later, other threats would come knocking. The morning after the bandit attack, Sarah stood in the fields, looking out at the horizon. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden light over the rolling hills. The air was fresh, and the earth beneath her boots felt solid and reassuring. She had always loved this place, the land, the open sky, the quiet. But now, she knew she couldn't stay in Cedar Ridge forever. There were bigger challenges out there, and Sarah was ready to face them. She had proven to herself that she could stand up against the toughest of foes, and that was only the beginning. One by one, the people of Cedar Ridge came to see her. They offered their thanks and tried to give her gifts, but Sarah turned them all away. She didn't need their gratitude or their presence. She was doing what needed to be done. That was enough for her. But as she listened to their words, she realized something important. Cedar Ridge had become more than just a place to live. It was a symbol of what people could accomplish when they worked together, when they stood up against the odds. And she had become a symbol of that strength, though she never asked for it. Sarah's decision was made quietly, one morning when the light was soft and the world seemed at peace. She would leave Cedar Ridge, not because she didn't care about the people, but because she knew that her journey had just begun. She had the skills, the drive, and the courage to face whatever lay ahead. And though it hurt to leave behind the life she had known, she couldn't ignore the call of something bigger than herself. With her rifle slung over her shoulder and her heart full of determination, Sarah left Cedar Ridge that day. She didn't know where the road would take her, but she knew that it was time to move on. The world outside Cedar Ridge was full of dangers, and she was ready to face them head-on. She had become more than just the farm girl in a small town. She was a sharpshooter, a protector, and someone who wouldn't back down in the face of fear. As Sarah disappeared into the distance, the people of Cedar Ridge watched her go, knowing that they had witnessed something extraordinary. The farm girl had become a legend, and the legend would live on in their hearts for generations to come. But for Sarah, the journey was far from over. The world was waiting, and she would meet it with the same courage and determination that had defined her from the very beginning. Sarah's journey took her far from the small town of Cedar Ridge. As she traveled, she passed through towns and villages, each one holding new challenges and new dangers. The world outside the comfort of her farm was far different from what she had known. It wasn't just the wide, open spaces of the countryside that were unfamiliar. It was the people, their ways, and the constant threats that seemed to loom on every horizon. The further she went, the more she realized that she was no longer just a farm girl. She had become something more, something stronger, a force to be reckoned with. Her reputation had already begun to spread, carried by word of mouth, reaching even the most remote corners of the land. Tales of the sharpshooter who had taken down the infamous bandits of Cedar Ridge were whispered in every tavern and inn. Some spoke of her with awe, while others spoke with fear. No one quite knew what she looked like, but the stories painted her as a mysterious figure, a young woman with deadly accuracy and a fierce determination. Some said she was a ghost, others claimed she was a bounty hunter, but no one truly knew the truth. All that mattered was that she had saved an entire town, and that was enough to make her a legend. In each town she passed through, Sarah kept to herself. She did not seek recognition, and she certainly did not want to be a hero. But wherever she went, trouble seemed to follow. Robbers, outlaws, and corrupt men who believed they could take whatever they wanted found themselves standing in her way. Sarah never sought out conflict, but when it found her, she responded with the same calm precision she had used to protect Cedar Ridge. With every encounter, her skills grew sharper and her name became more well-known. But despite the growing legends surrounding her, Sarah remained unchanged. She was still the same farm girl at heart, though now she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. One evening, as Sarah entered a bustling town, she could feel the tension in the air. The streets were filled with merchants, travelers, and townsfolk, but something felt off. She couldn't put her finger on it, but there was a nervous energy that hung in the atmosphere. As she passed through the crowded market, she overheard snippets of conversation. Whispers about a group of mercenaries who had taken control of the town, intimidating the locals and extorting money from them. The more Sarah listened, the more she understood that these mercenaries were ruthless, and they were using fear to get what they wanted. It wasn't long before she realized that the town's sheriff had been bought off, and the town's leaders were too afraid to act. Sarah's heart sank as she walked past the town's jail. The sheriff's office was quiet, the doors slightly ajar, but she could hear muffled voices inside. As she stood there, a man emerged from the shadows, his face pale and drawn. He looked at her, his eyes wide with recognition. He had heard the stories about the sharpshooter who had taken down the bandits in Cedar Ridge, and he knew that she was the only person who could help. Without a word, he motioned for Sarah to follow him into the alleyway. "I don't know if you're who they say you are," the man said, his voice shaky. "But I know one thing, this town needs you. The mercenaries, they're taking over, and we can't do anything about it. Our sheriff's too scared, and the people are losing hope. We need someone who isn't afraid to stand up to them." Sarah listened carefully as the man spoke, her heart heavy with the weight of what had happened to this town. She had seen it before, towns bullied by criminals, helpless to defend themselves. But this time, it was different. This time, she wasn't just going to stand by and let it happen. Sarah made her decision quickly. She wasn't going to let the mercenaries tear this town apart. They had taken too much, and now they would pay. Under the cover of darkness, Sarah made her way to the mercenaries' camp, hidden on the outskirts of the town. She moved like a shadow, silent and unseen. The camp was surrounded by a tall wooden fence, with armed guards patrolling the perimeter. It was clear that the mercenaries were well-trained and well-prepared, but Sarah wasn't afraid. She had faced worse before, and she knew how to handle herself. She had learned the importance of patience, of waiting for the right moment to strike. And tonight, the moment had arrived. She positioned herself behind a pile of crates, her rifle in hand. She could see the guards standing by the campfire, laughing and joking as they drank. They had no idea that Sarah was watching them, that the one person they feared most was standing just a few hundred yards away, preparing to take them down. She waited, her fingers steady on the rifle, her breath slow and controlled. The wind was still, and the night was quiet. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. The first shot rang out, and the nearest guard crumpled to the ground, his body slumping against the fence. The mercenaries froze, looking around in confusion, but they couldn't see where the shot had come from. Sarah moved quickly, her shots precise and deadly. One by one, the mercenaries fell. They had no chance to react, no time to defend themselves. Sarah was like a ghost in the night, taking down each one with the same calm precision that had made her famous. Within moments, the camp was in chaos. The remaining mercenaries scattered, trying to flee, but Sarah was already ahead of them. She had them cornered, and there was no escape. By the time the town awoke the next morning, the mercenaries were gone. Their camp was abandoned, their weapons scattered across the ground. Sarah had done what she set out to do. She had freed the town from their grasp. The people, once again, had been saved, and they knew who to thank. But just as before, Sarah didn't stay for the praise. She didn't need it. She knew that she had done the right thing, and that was enough for her. As she walked away from the town, her rifle slung over her shoulder, Sarah felt a sense of peace settle within her. She had made a difference, and the road ahead was still long. But she wasn't afraid. She had proven to herself that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. The sharpshooter who had saved Cedar Ridge had now become a symbol of hope for anyone who was oppressed, anyone who needed a champion. And as Sarah moved forward, she knew that wherever injustice reared its ugly head, she would be there, ready to fight. Her journey wasn't over. It had only just begun.